labor, management. You know, if you look historically, we have a holiday each September in the United States, and it's usually the first Monday of the month. Yeah, it's called Labor Day. Labor Day is there to honor the labor people, the people that do the labor of the work, but really it's a holiday for everybody, and we're celebrating the aspect of unions. Say what you want about unions, and a lot of people have positive and a lot of people have negative things to say, but they have helped create in the United States and as well as set the standard around the world for a lot of safe working conditions. OSHA exists because of unions. The 40-hour work week exists because of unions. Prior to that, employers just had you work whatever they wanted to, and it was not uncommon to work 7 days a week back in the early 1900s. Unions changed all that. We started getting paid time and a half after 40 hours. We had different aspects of compensation. If you had your arm torn off by a machine that was unguarded in the workplace, then we established an entire way to compensate employees for that and make certain that they weren't fired the next day. And by the way, that really happened prior to unions implementing different aspects about workplace safety. We had a lot of unsafe working conditions. We had children in factories. Unions changed all that. Historically, unions have changed how we do work in a very positive manner for the employees, and it changed how we did business. On the other hand, if you look now on a national basis, only just over 6% of the private sector has unions. The other 93.3% of them are not unionized. In the public sector, the unions have hugely swelled in numbers. We typically have about 34% of the public employees are unionized. So you have a different change between them all. We have just around 11% of the entire workforce in the United States that are unionized. It really has changed from the aspect when we first established a thing called Labor Day, which is the first Monday of September every year to celebrate this entire time. So let's look at the union as to what happens over there. We're going to look at how they organize, how they negotiate a contract, what they talk about at the table. So when some workers want to form a union, they either contact a union or a union contacts them. They get workers to sign authorization cards. Well, they collect a certain number representing the employees, and they file those cards with the National Labor Relations Board. It's called the NLRB. You'll see it mentioned in different types of financial papers and so on. So with that, they file, and if it's determined that enough people have filled out the cards and turned them in, the National Labor Relations Board says, we will have an election. So, for instance, if a 2,000 employee unit files for a petition of an election for a union, and 100 people vote, and 51 of those 100 vote for a union, those 51 end up making certain that all 2,000 have a union. It's not the majority of the people, it's the majority of those voting that makes a determination. So regardless, you'll have a campaign. The union will campaign everything else and point out all the negativity that's there. You'll have the organization will point out all the good things there. You'll have people going back and forth. But in the end, the workers themselves are the ones that vote to determine whether or not they want to have an organization to represent them. They represent them in two areas. They represent them in what we call contract negotiations. And in contract negotiations, they're going to talk about a whole series of different things. And it just depends how new and how big the organization is. Brand new unions will have a small contract, but long-term unions will have lots of different sections of them. You know for a fact there will at least be 3 segments to a union contract because federal law says that it is required to make certain that all unions have a right to negotiate on wages, hours, and working conditions. Put that in your notes because of the fact that's critical, not just for this class, but really in real life. Once you finish this class and you're out there, just let it roll right off your tongue. Wages, hours, and working conditions. Those are the 3 things of mandatory subjects to bargaining, collective bargaining. So that's part of it. The other part of it, you'll see a whole series of things. It's pretty common to have 16 to 20 different sections of a contract that deal with different aspects of it that both sides have brought up and want to make sure you have that because the contract does more than just cover those 3 basic things. It covers a whole series of things. And unions also represent the workers when the workers feel that part of the contract is violated. When they do that, they have what we call a grievance. And they file a grievance saying, this worker did this and this worker did that. Also, sometimes the supervisor gives a reprimand or whatever and some negative impact on the employees. The union then can actually go and talk to the supervisor and the organization itself and even appeal a decision in what we call a grievance. So let's talk about this. First of all, when you have the bargaining unit on both sides, you have the union as well as management. We call that collective bargaining. And when they meet at a table and they talk about the different things, they negotiate pay, benefits, and other work terms. You'll see that happening. And then when it's reached with management, the union representatives take the collective bargaining agreement that's proposed back to the members for ratification. They vote on it. The management takes it back to their board. They make certain that they approve it before they actually sign off. And then they have a collective bargaining agreement. It's called collective bargaining. It's called the contract. Sometimes people call it different terminologies, but those are the two main terms that are out there. Negotiation issues, obviously wages, hours, and working conditions. They'll talk about union security, what happens in the workplace. Sometimes they get down into really small different minutiae depending upon what areas need to be defined. There's usually a union security clause. They'll have types that unionize. This shop over here is unionized. These maintain the right to do this. It'll also talk about right to work laws. And talk about right to work laws. This is older language because of the fact it's changed, and we'll talk about the reason it changed. But you'll see the dark blue are what we call right to work states, where actually you can have a union, but if you don't want to be part of the union, you can sit down and say, I don't want to be part of the union, and they can't force you into it. You probably get the same benefits that those that are in because of the fact that the company is not going to pay somebody $17.25 here and somebody that's non-union is $17.25. They'll probably pay exactly the same to provide the same benefits, but the person doesn't have to be part of a union. You also have the aspect of what's in there. You'll have the grievance procedures. If somebody feels that my boss is picking on me, so then you'll have multiple steps in what we call a grievance process, where here they're bringing the steward in. We call him a shop steward. Even in white-collar situations, we still call them a shop steward. And then you'll have sometimes a thing called mediation. Mediation is a matter of somebody comes in if you have a problem and either collective bargaining or an grievance, and they sit there and they go back in the room with the union group and say, you're going to lose this because of the fact that and then the same person runs over to the management and says, you're going to lose this. I've been in these several times. You can kind of tell. So the mediator runs back and forth. I have to tell you, a lot of times mediation is pretty effective. Too often personalities get involved in this thing and people lose their cool and they don't pay attention to what is reality and so on. So mediation, I think, works pretty well. If mediation doesn't, a lot of times you go to what's called arbitration. An arbitrator hears both sides of the story, and when you choose binding arbitration is what we call it, when you choose that, the arbitrator makes a decision, says, okay, management, you will do this. Labor, you will do this. And you do that, and that's it. So that there's the three different levels you have there. The unions has different tools. If they have usually a contract impasse, they have a work stoppage where they demand, we're going to stop working altogether because you haven't met our demands. And they want to pressure management into negotiating different items. So you'll have that. We call that a strike. They actually work, they walk out, and they abandon their work. And all of a sudden the company stops working. Now, the management sometimes then comes in and on a work stoppage, sometimes the management tosses them out. Sometimes they'll pressure them, the employees, into taking their terms and actually bring in other workers in and replace them. Now, that's a very strong time. And literally what happens, sometimes you'll have that going back and forth, and sometimes you'll have some violence taking place because people don't appreciate them crossing the picket line. And so the impact, it has impact on the company and the employees, and you have a whole series of different aspects of it. So sometimes you'll have a strike. The management sometimes will also sit down and have a lockout. Those are the two primary tools you'll see when it comes to negotiation outside of the negotiating arena. There's an important case I want to make certain you have in your notes. It's called Janus versus AFSCME. It's a landmark decision. when it came out, the overview of the case is that Janus was an AFSCME member. AFSCME stands for American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. You'll see that a lot on the East Coast of the United States. But Janus was a worker, and he did not appreciate the fact that Janus contributed to a political party. He felt that he should not be associated with that, so he filed a case. And it went through the whole system, and the Supreme Court came down and says, yes, no matter what happens, a person does not have to be part of a union, because a union is a political player. And because of that, the dues that workers are contributing are helping a political party, and you cannot force an American to contribute to a political party, even if your union votes to support it. A person does not have to be pressured into contributing to a party. So they said because of that, the Janus had a huge impact on organized labor. In effect, how the union it receives finances, because typically what would happen, the union would set the amount of money called dues. They take out of your paycheck each month. We will take $55 a month for union dues out of your wages. Now, of course, you would vote on that, except sometimes your vote really didn't count. So people stopped paying that $55 a month and supporting the union, and all of a sudden the union lost a huge amount of money in the process. Because now everybody in the United States does not have to contribute to unions at all. You can elect not to be part of a union. It changed everything. It even changed the overall impact of union influence in the political world. So the pros and cons, you had drawbacks from the employees regarding union membership, and the other part is going to shape future labor relations and all the choices and policies that come along with that. On this section, I want you to always know about Janus versus AFSCME. If you need to, there's a lot of resources out there to look that up. Right to Work states what a grievance is. Mediation is non-binding. Arbitration generally is. About contract negotiations, also about strikes and lockouts. All these are critical to understanding some of the very basic components of labor and management. Take care.